Ben and Eddie are back with us, along with MS Now senior national security reporter David Rohde. David Rohde, I feel like I have whiplash because this president can't seem to decide if his best strategy here is military might or economic prowess.
Yes, and that's why this is proving so ineffective, because he's using one strategy for a week or two and another strategy, for another week or two. And so the Iranians, this just isn't deterring them. I've talked to Iranian officials. I've talked to other diplomats from the region. And they, essentially feel there's a pattern evolving, which is that mediators go in, the Pakistanis, the Omanis, and the Qataris, and try to work out a deal. And then maybe some of the more moderate people in Iran agree to a deal. And then a hardliner in Iran fires a missile at something. So the bottom line is that Donald Trump is not feared in the region. When he ran for president in 2024, he said, we will be respected again. We're not respected again, particularly by Iran.
So if they're not feared, Ben, then what is the United States' best off-ramp here?
I mean, there is no good off-ramp that just doesn't involve the United States taking a deal that is pretty good on Iran's terms. And just to build on something about the Iranian leadership, when you assassinate the leader of the country, and I'm not suggesting that the supreme leader was a good guy, but when you decapitate a regime like that, you are going to radicalize the people inside of it, by definition. And the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the RGC, because it was an existential war for this regime, they're the people with the guns. They're the people with the power to control the Strait of Hormuz. So they are the power inside of Iran right now. The most hardline elements in that regime are actually, so Trump's war has actually made the Iranian regime more hardline and more likely to stand up to the United States. And they've demonstrated that they have this leverage of the Strait of Hormuz. So at the end of the day, Donald Trump is going to have to accept that he's going to lose this war because he set out to change the regime. He's not going to do that. He set out to destroy the Iranian nuclear program. He's not going to do that without the introduction of significant amounts of ground forces. So the only off-ramp is you take a deal in which the Iranians are going to get some revenue just for reopening that strait. And then, frankly, I'm not sure you get a nuclear deal. You try. I mean, I would, if I was Trump, I'd try. But the Iranians show no indication that they're going to give him some diplomatic victory with the nuclear deal. I think right now you just got to end this war and reopen that body of water.
Well, to that point, Iran issued a new set of demands just to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, including reparations for war damage. Here is what President Trump said about that yesterday.
They asked for reparations, you might say, or they asked for money for the damage that we've done. I said, that's a good idea. Well, we're going to ask for money for the damage they've done over a 50-year period. Whether you go SS Cole or whether you go all of the people that were so badly hurt, so badly wounded or killed, many thousands of people, and maybe damages for the 52,000 protesters over the last 4 months that were killed in Iran.
The idea, Ben, of reparations wasn't part of the original memo of understanding both sides signed. I mean, you have the vice president saying we're in the middle of this thing. It feels like we are still at the beginning, giving the number steps back that the administration keeps taking.
Yet here's the problem. The Iranians are not going to crack under economic pressure. As you mentioned, they've been under sanctions for decades. They've been facing this war for 6 months now. They don't care if their people starve. That's one of the things we don't like about this government. But they're willing to bet that the United States and the global economy cannot withstand several more months of the Strait of Hormuz being closed more than they're going to feel the squeeze. And so that's what gives them this leverage over Trump. And so at the end of the day, look, reparations, the Iranians are throwing everything into the mix. It's pretty clear that the formula is that they want some form of revenue, either from tolling the strait or from sanctions relief, to reopen it. And at some point, Donald Trump is going to have to decide whether he's going to just declare victory and make some kind of deal, or whether we're going to be stuck in this kind of limbo that is creating very real shortages in the global economy on fossil fuel, on helium, on fertilizer, and shortages that are going to hit the American worker and consumer more with time than they already have.
Well, let's talk about that last point, because what we're saying is, in essence, the Iranians won't be willed into this by economic pressure, but perhaps Americans will. You now have the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve at its lowest point since 1983. In part, that is because Donald Trump, back in March, ordered the release of 172 million barrels of oil. I mean, he cooked the books so that people wouldn't feel it in the short term, but that's going to come back to bite him now.
Absolutely. And I'll leave it to Dave and Ben to talk about the particulars of the war. But what we do know is that we're feeling the pain. Everyday ordinary people are feeling the pain. And we're not talking about what's happening in Virgin Islands or in Puerto Rico, who are actually feeling the impact of the close of the strait more than we are on the mainland. So look, grocery prices higher 50 years, gas prices, right? And that's only going to get worse. And the question we have to ask ourselves over and over again is why?
Yeah, for what?
What are the objections? What are the objections? What are we trying to achieve in this moment? I don't know.